Hello, my name is Simranjeet Singh, and this is an overview of my assignment 3 for Comp 251. This is our last assignment, so we'll quickly go over it. So the overview is that this is a loan approval system, and we're going to use a priority queue with a max heap to determine which applicants get approved first. So the backend here we have a priority queue. This is basically the same code we saw for Lab 8, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but we're just building a priority queue based on a max heap, meaning that the applicants with the highest score will be approved first. So here we have applicant.java, and this is where we're going to store our applicants, and each applicant will have a name, a score, a requested loan amount, years of education experience, also a projected annual profit for up to 30 years, which will store in an integer array. So here public applicant is the constructor that will create an applicant object, and will read all this information from my file and then update it. And here we're going to check if this applicant is qualified. If they are, we're going to update their score. These two are helpful functions I've written below. I'll go over it in a bit. And here compare to, this is used for the priorityqueue.java to basically build the max heap to see which applicant score is higher and to actually organize them. And here, this is another method that was given that is used to find an applicant. So basically, if it equals another object, then it's the same applicant. I will return that. And here, toString, we're doing a string representation of the applicant. And most of the time, there will be a name, a tab, and the requested loan amount, which will again be written on an output file. And here are some helpful functions I wrote down. So first, we have update score. We basically use the formula that was given to us, this one right here, and we'll use that to calculate a score for each applicant and then update their score. Here we check if a applicant is qualified, and an applicant is qualified if they have at least a total of 10 years of education and experience. So if they don't have that, then return false, otherwise return true. And here we just have functions that return the score and the requested loan amount. These two will be useful in loan.java for when we're actually doing some comparisons. So speaking of loan.java, here it is. And here we have loan. So we're basically initializing the three queues. So we have a priority queue for active list, then we have approved list and rejected list, and at the beginning our budget will be 0. So here's the run method, which is like the main method for this whole operation. And first thing we do is we print out all the options for the user, and they can select one of 5 options, and then we're going to go through and execute depending on which object they have. So we create a scanner object so we can actually read in what the user is typing, and we'll do a while loop because the user can do multiple options in one run. And basically we print out the prompt instruction, and then we read the input, and then we split the input into 2 parts. If this is so either be an integer with a blank file name or budget, if this is actual proper command. So to check if we're actually working with a proper command, we have to do some sanitary checks. So first, we must make sure that the command actually starts with an integer corresponding to like an actual choice. So we check if it's parsable, which is a helper function below. Same one I used for assignment 2. And if it's not parsable, we have some arbitrary input that's not a correct instruction. So we're just going to close and then exit the application. And here we have just numbers here just for my own sanity when I was debugging to see where we're actually like returning. So that's just why we have numbers here, just to make sure that I know where everything's going wrong. And then now we know that, okay, if it's parsable, that means, okay, we get the integer value, and then we check it, right? If it's below 0 or above 5, that means that they didn't choose an option available. So again, we exit. And then here we're just doing some checks about the length. So basically, if they give us command 1, which is like read an application, they must also give us a file name, right? So we have to have 2 tokens. Same thing here. If they give us a new budget, they might actually provide the integer value for the budget. So that's what I'm checking right here. And if any of those fail, we'll actually exit. And here, just one last check, that if we are updating the budget, we must make sure that the second value is parsable, meaning that we're actually given an integer value for the budget. And after this, we are confident that the command actually follows the correct syntax. and we just need to identify, oh, I don't know what this is it here. We just need to identify the command and execute it. So if the command equals 1, that means we have to load the applications. So we're going to call this helper function parse applications, and this is providing the file name, and then we're going to just tell the user that, okay, the applications have been processed. If they set 2, that means we're going to update the budget, set the budget, right? So we just parse the integer, so we get the value of the budget they want to add, and we add it to the current budget. Well, we start at 0, but we keep adding. And then we print out the new budget so the user knows. If the option, if they pick option 3, that means you have to look through the application, improve as many as possible, and we put priority on the higher score. So what we do is make a temporary array to hold the applications, and then we're going to go search through the active list. We're going to pop the top element, which is the applicant with the highest score, and we're going to check if that's within our budget. If they are within our budget, we're going to approve the request for the loan, add it to the approved list, and then we're going to take away the money from the budget, right? Because we already approved that loan. If that's not the case, we're going to add them to the current, we're going to add them to the temporary list, right? So after, what we do is all the non-approved applications, we're going to put them back into the active list. So if we ever have the budget later on, we can actually approve them. So that's what we're doing here. And then we do just a build heap just to make sure that we actually have everything in order, and then we print out that decisions have been made. Option 4 corresponds to us printing, not to the console, but into text files. And we're going to print active, approved, and rejected. So now these are blank, but when we actually run the code, we'll actually print them there. The reason I already have them made here is Eclipse was having issue displaying them on the Package Explorer, even when I made them, so I just made them in advance. You don't have to have these already made. If active.txt doesn't exist, the program will make that file and print it out with no problem. So the way to print it out, I found on Stack Overflow. I was kind of rusty, and from user iking. And I'm using buffer writer instead of string writer because I heard it's more efficient memory-wise. There's not that much of a difference, just a few more lines of code. So here, we write first active.txt. So we go through the priority queue, and while it's not empty, we pop the top element with the highest priority because we want to be in order. And then we append to that the score also, because that was part of the instructions, that in active we actually give the score as well. And then we write the string and then a new line. And very similarly, we write approve and rejected. Here we don't actually have to worry about the score. We just print it out, their name and the budget they want, or the loan amount they want. Now we close all these to prevent any memory leaks, and we let the user know, okay, we've made the following files, and they can read and figure out what's happening. Else, that means this corresponds to option 5. Again, we're going to update, so we're going to run parse application, which is right here. Give the file name, and then say application shall be updated. I could have merged this with 1, but I wanted to have a different prompt on the screen just to make it more clear. So here's parse application, and so we give it the input file name, and we make a new scanner object, read from the file, and while we have applications, we're going to read the file, and we're going to spread it on tab, right? Because every single sample input is going to follow this format exactly. So otherwise, if it doesn't follow that format, if we actually have to check, it'll be a lot more messier, but we're going forward with the assumption that the sample input and also the updated input will follow this exact format. And so we just actually read off here. We read the name, the loan amount, years of experience and education, and then this is the projected revenue. So we're just parsing, reading it, storing it here. I stored it like this just to make it more clear what's actually happening. I could have directly gone to this line, but I just wanted to make sure that everything was clear. And for the profit integer array, well, we're going to start it as the 4th, right? Because we first read all this information, and then all the last entries are that profit margin. So we just read through. It's not a fixed amount, so we actually have to do app.length minus 4, and then we update the prof integer array with the new information. And here applicant, we just make the applicant object with all the information we just saw above. And if an applicant, so now that we have an applicant, we have to store the applicant in the appropriate list. And if they don't qualify, we add it to the rejected list, right? So we just check if it's not qualified, add to the rejected list. If the new applicant, so here we check to see if the applicant's already in our active list. They're not. That means they're a new applicant. We just add it to the applicant list. However, if they do qualify and we already have their information, what we need to do is update their information, not add a new one, right? And then we just build Maxif to actually like get everything in order based on their score. And here again, this is the parsable helpful function. Just checks if a token is parsable and works the same way as last time and just returns false if it's not. So here we have test. So this is the test code for this function, and we just create a object and we run it. So let's do that right now. Let's do a run. So let's see. Okay, we have this prompt. So let's say we want to go through application.txt, and the applications have been processed. Let's set the budget to 300,000, which is the example provided, and then we're gonna say, okay, make the decision. Decisions have been made, and then we're gonna print the lists, and then we're gonna exit, right? So what I'm basically following is expecting is this right here. So let's check. So if I go to active.txt, we see we have Larry Page and Miriam, same with the correct scores as well. That's very good. And approved, we have some gal, some guy, exactly correct. And in rejected, we have John Smith, exactly as it should be. Now I want to do actually another one, and this time, oh, my mouse is a bit off. Again, we're gonna load applications .txt, and then we're gonna set the same budget, so 300,000. And instead of making the decision right away, we're gonna update .txt. So update.txt is right here. So we're gonna update John Smith, so it actually qualifies with 10 years. And Larry Page, we're gonna say, oh, he wants a lot less of a loan, so it's within our budget. So again, we're gonna make a new decision, and we're gonna print the options, and then we're gonna exit. So let's see what happens now. So let's go to approved first. So we go to approve. We see that Larry Page actually comes first, right? Because originally he had the highest priority score, but we didn't have the budget required. But now that he wants a less loan, we can actually like approve him first, and then some guy is approved afterwards. That means that in active, we have some guy and Miriam like last time, and we also have John Smith now, because now John Smith actually has 10 years of experience, so he qualifies. And if you go to reject.txt, John Smith still shows up, because according to instructions, we're gonna treat the qualified John Smith as a different application. We leave it rejected as is, and that should be. I think that's all. 13 minutes, not too bad, not as long as the last one, but this one was a fun project, the last one, and that should be all. So thank you for listening.